Hey, hi everyone. How you doing? This is Jonathan Lipp here from the Big Apple Film Festival. Welcome to BAFF CHATS. We're interviewing Pearl Gluck, who's one of our participating filmmakers in our upcoming Women's Filmmaker Showcase taking place at the SVA Theater here in New York City on January 19th and 20th. And Pearl's film Summer is screening Saturday, January 20th at 6:30 p.m. So hello, Pearl, and welcome.
Hi, Jonathan. This is so exciting. Thanks for having me.
Sure. So as I mentioned, Pearl's the director of Summer. So Pearl, if you could tell us about your film, Summer.
Yeah, Summer is a film that I wrote a few years ago when I was studying at CCNY in the MFA program. I ended up doing a different film for my MFA. But this was kind of a baby, project, a passion project, because it was based on some experiences that I've either had or known about in Hasidic summer camp, and also it's a subject that's very close to my heart, and that is, the education of femininity and identity in faith-based communities. So, having been brought up Hasidic, it's not like we were allowed to take out certain books from the library or know about certain aspects of our sexuality. In Divan, in my first film, which was a documentary, I actually talk about how I was the girl who found the textbooks for science before the teachers ripped out the sections on reproduction and evolution. So, of course, I was the girl that went to the library and took out Our Bodies, Ourselves and started to read what I later discovered, because I ended up going to Brandeis and, kind of had this ultimate feminist experience there, discovered what it was, which is this collective effort on the part of many women to educate women about their sexuality in the late 60s and 70s. And now you can basically find it online, but you can still get the book. So I've always wanted to do a piece that looks at that extreme, the power and innocence of learning about yourself in a setting that is loving, but restricted. So that's what it's about. And I met Melissa Weiss and Malky Malky Goldman, who were working with me on the project, and they said, let's do this. And so we found this amazing cast, as you will see, and they rocked it. And it was so incredible to explore, even with the actors, like their own, coming of age stories and how they can bring that stuff to the table. Because basically, in the end, it's a very basic human pursuit to explore yourself and to be a better person or learn about what you're capable of doing on this earth, whether that's through, your activism or your sexuality or intimacy or anything along those lines. So that was a very interesting interaction and experience behind the camera as well as in front of the camera.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that the intended audience are people who come from a strict religious background, or would you say it's more general as to just, people who have just felt, repressed in some way and feel the need to be able to, sort of free themselves on some level?
I really do believe it's a general audience in the sense that I think we've all experienced something we've explored without telling anyone, and learning whether we like what we learn or don't like what we learn about ourselves. And so in that sense, putting it in this, quote unquote restricted environment, like the Hasidic community where I was raised, just makes it so much more dramatic. But the fact is, we've all tried something we were told not to do. And, in this case, I don't want to give too much away, but there's an awakening for both girls. And, one of them is modeled after me, and has to do more with the kind of privilege that you have as a straight person or someone of more enabled situation. So, you come from a place where you're not marginalized, so you don't see clearly what you're drawing someone else into. And so I really did want to explore that kind of, privilege that comes with that. And I think they've nailed it. But I think it's general. I feel like we all have played on both sides of that.
Yeah. Coming from a religious Hasidic background yourself, how do you think that community would respond to this film? And also, do you think people in that community would even see it?
So in terms of how they would respond, I don't think it's a negative film or even a critical film. I think, and I've said this when I was directing the actors, and certainly it's written this way, it's done with a whole lot of love. I mean, both exist at the same time. Women coming to terms with their sexuality exist at the same time as women being very faith-based and trying to find a place where they could fit into a super religious environment that they actually have bought into and believe in so deeply. So, I think both faith and sexuality can exist at the same time, and the tensions between them my hope is that it'll open dialogue. So I do think that, I don't think the Hasidic community will be offended by it in any way. If anything, it raises the question. So it's definitely not negative or critical. But it does ask, like all my work, it asks a question in a very direct way using the subtlety of my hope anyway, of storytelling. And in terms of whether they'll come, I've invited my entire family. So,
okay.
Of course, I hope the Hasidic community will come if they do come to movies. Some do now, some don't. Things are shifting since I was last there. But it is definitely not a film that's meant to be like this expose,
Okay. And also, I'm curious also about the casting. The leads are Juliet, Thea McCartan, Emmy James. Really great cast. How did you go about the casting process? Did you know these actors beforehand? Did you audition them?
Great question. Actually, it's a really good question in my case because I have documentary background, and then my new feature is a doc hybrid with fiction, and everyone in the film they're not actors in most cases. They're, people are survivors of trafficking or truckers, and you can see when you watch it that it's got that doc feel to it. So this is something that I'm really committed to with Summer, is to work with Caroline Sinclair, who has worked with me before. She's amazing as a casting director. And I did not know these actors before. And, we did go through a full-on casting process in New York, and it was awesome. And what's really cool about how Emmy and Juliet got the role is we really connected with both Emmy and Juliet, but we weren't sure what to do about the Bela character. Juliet, I was just blown. The minute I saw her, I was like, oh my gosh, she is Shani. And then she mentioned that she knows Emmy. And we said, oh, that's interesting. She was just there yesterday. And I heard that they're friends. And then I was thinking about the chemistry that not only already exists, but again, I like to work with what already exists in the lives of my actors because I want them to bring what's authentic to them to the table. So we brought Emmy back in. She was off running somewhere else, and within 15 minutes she came in, and that was all we needed. And Thea's amazing. I mean, she's actually a blonde-haired woman, and we put a shako on her, so she looks like she's brunette now, but she's not. So you've seen her in various things, such as Orange is the New Black or the Fiber One commercial that's gone viral. But these women were so incredible to work with, and in most cases they're not Jewish, but again, like I said, people have these more general and widely human experiences of not fitting in or finding your voice or yourself sexually, and not just women, obviously. So, and especially today when we're given, thank God, a lot more permission to ask ourselves what our identity is, and have the ability to follow through with it. So, and here's to fighting for more of an egalitarian approach to that. But, these women really brought it to the table. And then, there's the other actors in it who are just amazingly generous and awesome. So.
Okay. Great. Yeah. And if you also just speak a little bit about, some of your other work, just so we can get to know you a little bit more. Some of your earlier work, Where's Joel Baum, and some of your documentary films, Devon, I believe, was one, and Junior, and I know you currently have The Turnout, which is a feature film. Just some of the other projects you're involved in.
Sure. The thing, I started with documentary, but the documentary is autobiographical. And it wasn't even autobiographical because I wanted it to be. It was my amazing editor, Zelda Greenstein, who said to me, after almost 3 years of working on the project, this has to be about you, which was both shocking, and I just almost kicked her out of my office. And then in the end, she was right, and so we, poured through hundreds of hours of footage to try and make it visually autobiographical. And it ended up being my way of looking at my Hasidic background and kind of putting a woman's voice in the patriarchal tradition of Hasidic storytelling, which, usually the public voice is male, and that is slowly shifting. But, what certainly wasn't at that time. And then when I started to do fiction, it was because I'd gone to CCNY to study and be able to teach. Now I teach at Penn State. That I went there to get my MFA just a few years ago, and I decided to try fiction, but with a documentary approach. And that's when, I'd mentioned earlier, Summer is what I'd written back then, but I'd also written Where's Joel Baum, which is based on a true story. And I knew I had to make that film right then and there because I met Loser Torsky, who is actually in One of Us right now on the Netflix documentary. He's one of the three amazingly brave people that are in the film. But his first role, especially his first role with an actress like Lynn Cohen was with Joel Baum, because I met him and I said, that's it. I'm making this movie first because Loser is bringing so much of his own background to the story. So that's a very dark film, a very darkly comedic film, but it is very dark, and it takes on a lot of the energy that Loser and I were working with together. And again, it's because I like working so closely with my actors. So then I took on another project called Junior because, again, I met a woman named L.J. Stewart here at Penn State, and she had interviewed and researched the question of mothers who lose their sons and daughters to racially motivated police violence. And it was a one-woman play, and I saw it, and I couldn't get out of my seat. And I'd always wanted to do something like Rodrigo Garcia's, one-shot short film. And I thought this would really be conducive to that, and she was willing to work with me. So again, I worked very closely with my actor, LJ, who wrote the script and let me adapt it with her. And that was the next film. And while I was doing all that, I had been researching the question of sex trafficking and truck stops in Ohio, where I was living with my first teaching gig at Ohio University. And again, it was informed by the people that I was meeting. I'd met a trucker, and he took me on the road, and that's how I learned about the situation and how truckers are very effective at calling into question what's happening with prostitution at truck stops. In other words, let's call it what it is, trafficking. So that is when I decided to write The Turnout. So it's a fictionalized narrative based on testimonies given to me by some of the very people that play in the film. So that was experimental, and also I would call it my first fiction in some ways. I learned a lot from that experience, and I'm continuing to explore my voice from behind the camera, both as a fictionalized storyteller, but also based on true stories. So that's where Summer fits in perfectly because I know it very well. And working with some of these actors and finding where they fit into it, like Thea, for example. Talk to her about her mother and how she brought that story to this film. And the same, I spoke to Juliet at length and obviously Emmy, because everybody really brought their relationship with strong female characters in their past and their faith into the narrative. So that's my previous work, and currently I'm working on my, as you can imagine, I go places, I live in certain areas, and I tell the stories there. And I'm in central Pennsylvania, and I'm currently working on a new film. Right now, I'm developing it about white supremacy and the rise of it, specifically a flag war here in central Pennsylvania.
Is that a documentary or a narrative?
I don't think so, no. I've already interviewed everybody who was involved in a true story, and we're starting to think about cast and talking to Caroline about it. Yeah, I'm super excited about it because it'll, you learn as you continue to make work. We're all works in progress, and you just learn as you continue to make the work.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I want to thank you so much, Pearl. Again, Pearl Gluck's film, Summer, screening at the Big Apple Film Festival Women's Filmmaker Showcase on Saturday, January 20th at 6:30 p.m.
Jonathan, can I say something real quick?
Sure.
I want to thank you because, we're all looking at the black dresses and the speeches and the buttons, and all that is super important because visuals do matter and activism matters. But the fact that you're doing the showcase is so moving. And I just want to I just want to express my gratitude that the Big Apple Film Festival is doing a Women's Filmmaker Showcase. I can't wait to see the other films and meet the other filmmakers. But thank you so much. And it's so awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, to be part of it.
Thanks. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. We're looking forward to seeing you on January 20th. Bye-bye now. Thank you.
Bye-bye.